Here's a pattern I want you to honestly check yourself against. Get inspired by something, whether that be a new goal, new direction, or a version of yourself, and for a few days, you work. Really work. High energy, high output, fully convinced that this is the thing. And then it fades. That inspiration is gone. And without the inspiration driving you, the task starts to feel uncomfortable. It starts becoming boring, hard, directions unclear. You find a reason to do something else instead, something more interesting. And then the new inspiration arrives for a completely different thing, and the cycle starts again. If that sounds familiar, this video is going to be one of the most useful things you can watch this week. And there's a name for this pattern. I'll get to that in a couple of minutes. And the reason it matters is because once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. And unseeing it is no longer an option. The shiny object syndrome. Let me describe the pattern in full, because most people recognize pieces of it, but not the whole thing. It starts with inspiration. Something genuinely captures your attention, whether that be a business idea, fitness goal, a skill you want to build. And the inspiration is real. You really work incredibly hard on it. The problem is, it's never permanent. And after a few days, sometimes even a few hours, the inspiration dissipates. As soon as it's gone, the task that felt exciting now feels like effort. And the effort without inspiration feels like it's the wrong thing to be doing. So you procrastinate, or you find something else. And then new inspiration arrives for something completely different. That new energy, new certainty, new beginning. Same pattern underneath. I came across someone describing this recently. They're almost 30, no meaningful career path, no hobbies or relationships they'd built and maintained over time, no financial stability, health. They didn't feel very healthy or not in shape. And they traced it back to this exact pattern. Inspired and intense for a few days, then avoidant and looking for the next shiny object. Repeated for a decade. They wrote, "I know that the next time the scheduled task comes, I'll face the same dilemma. And if I don't change, another 10 years will pass. I will not have changed." That's the real cost to this pattern. Not the wasted day, the wasted years. It's not the inspiration that's the problem. It's mistaking the feeling of inspiration for the work itself. This is why motivated people often build the least. Here's the counterintuitive part. The people who are most motivated feel the most inspired, who work the hardest in bursts, are often the ones who build the least. Because motivation is a feeling, and the feeling is temporary. The brain produces motivation as a response to novelty, something new or interesting, and promising triggers that dopamine spike. And that spike feels like drive. It feels like you finally have the answer. It feels like this time is different, but it's not different. It's just your brain responding to the novelty the way it always does. And the novelty fades by design. The dopamine response that fires when something is new is specifically designed to decrease as familiarity increases. This is not a flaw. That's the system working correctly. But if you've been using motivation as the fuel for your work, the fuel runs out every time. And you're left with the task minus the feeling, which is exactly where most people stop. To get good at anything, you have to do it consistently, day in and day out. You have to do something so much that doing the work will feel boring at times. Do the boring work. This is incredibly important. You're not always going to have motivation. This is where that discipline kicks in. And if you can make it a lifestyle, even better. If your identity, your core beliefs of who you are line up with doing the thing, and you can become obsessed with it, it just makes it that much easier. The people who build things over years are not more motivated than you. They just don't require motivation to keep going. They built the relationship with the work and the exit that exists independently of how they feel about any given day. The work happens because it's scheduled, not because they woke up inspired. Like today, I didn't want to make this video. I was tired, procrastinated this to like 8 p.m. to get started on it, but I showed up. It was in my schedule, it was in my daily plan. I said I would sit down to do something. Because that's what I made a promise to myself to do at the start of the year. You just have to do what you say you're going to do. You have this trust account that you build up with yourself. It's like a bank. Every time you say you're going to do something, however big or small, and you do it, you're putting some money in that account and building up that level of trust with yourself. Like if you say you're going to make your bed in the morning and you make your bed, you're building that level of trust because you did something you said you would. And even though it's a small thing, it's a good starting point for a lot of people if everything else feels too overwhelming. But if you tell yourself you're going to make the bed and then you don't, you're continuing to make this cycle happen where now your brain doesn't believe you because you're taking money out of this trust account with yourself. If you're not putting enough into the trust account with yourself and you're taking out too much, it's just like your bank account. You go under, you go into the red where there's less trust than you have money in the bank for yourself. Well, it's going to be very hard to do anything because you're just not going to believe yourself that you're going to do anything. It's going to create this negative feedback loop of you constantly not being able to do anything or start it because you don't believe that you're the type of person who can follow through on it based on a bunch of negative reinforcements of this, of you taking money out of the account by not doing things you say you're going to do. The trick is you can start whenever. You can start putting money in the trust account by just doing what you say you're going to do. Pick a reasonable goal that you can do every day. You need a main quest. You need a mission, a purpose, if you will. And take consistent action on that every day. That's what's going to really help. But if that's too daunting to start with something smaller. This is why fitness is such a good starting point. Start with improving yourself. That's the baseline. And then we can go from there. You may say, well, I want to help everyone else, but it's very hard to help other people until you are able to help yourself get to a sufficient level. The discomfort avoidance mechanism. Here's the other half of the pattern that doesn't get talked about enough. It's not just chasing shiny objects. It's specifically avoiding discomfort. Every planned task, when the time actually comes to do it, carries some version of discomfort. It might be boring. It might be confusing with no clear path forward. It might be embarrassing, like putting yourself out before you feel ready. Or it might be painful, physically, emotionally, cognitively. In the moment that discomfort appears, your brain offers an exit, path of least resistance, something more comfortable or more interesting, something that isn't the thing. Remember, that's the whole point of this. The whole core of the challenge is just do your main thing. Focus on taking action on your main thing every day. Because the exit comes and the exit feels completely justified in the moment. But in that moment, the discomfort is real and the future benefits is abstract. The discomfort is immediate, but the benefit is eventual. And the brain, wired to resolve immediate discomfort, takes the exit, the easy path, the path of least resistance every time, unless you build a system that removes the exit first. Here's the reframe that actually changes this. The discomfort you feel when you sit down to do the planned task, that's not a signal that you're doing the wrong thing. That's a signal that you're doing the exact thing you should be doing. Because everything worth building lives on the other side of that feeling, the other side of discomfort, the other side of being comfortable. It lives in the discomfort. That gym session that produces the results is the one where you're pushing your body to failure. That video that helps someone else is the one that you almost didn't post. That business decision that moves things forward is the one that felt very uncomfortable to make. Discomfort is not the obstacle. It's the marker. It's not a bug. It's a feature. It's part of the process. It's supposed to be there. The thing pointing at what matters. The discomfort you feel before the right action is not a warning. It's a signal that you found the thing worth doing. So here's what a decade of this pattern can actually cost. I want to sit down with the costs for a minute, because it's easy to look at a day of shiny object chasing and think, it's just one day, it's not a big deal. But a pattern is just a day repeated until it becomes a year, and a year repeated until it becomes a decade. The person I mentioned earlier, almost 30, tracing everything back to this pattern, they didn't waste a decade in one dramatic moment. They wasted it one comfortable exit at a time. One I'll start fresh tomorrow at a time. Choosing to be disciplined tomorrow instead of today. One shiny thing at a time, right? The pattern is painless in the moment. That's what makes it so damaging over time. Because tomorrow doesn't come. Consistency is what compounds. 3 focus hours every day, pointed at one thing for a year, produces something real, something visible that didn't exist before, but inconsistency also compounds. And this is what produces the gaps between where you are and where you thought you'd be by now. The gap isn't caused by one bad week, it's caused by every moment that exit felt easier than the work, compounded. There's someone out there right now with half your talent, half your intelligence who's beating you, not because they're more gifted, because they picked one thing and didn't stop. They became obsessed with it, while you were picking 3 or 4 things, and then restarting and recycling. Now I understand it's important to have contingency plans, versus the other train of thought to David Goggins, burn the boats, have one plan, just go down it. Now both have their time and their place, and honestly a lot of it's going to depend on your psychological makeup, your personality. How risk averse or how risk tolerant are you? But a lot of you are quitting or not taking action on the thing because you're worrying about problems that don't even exist yet. You're thinking about problem like 25 when you're on problem 1 right now. Take it one step at a time. Don't think about all the problems that haven't even arisen yet. What problems are you dealing with right now? So here's why accountability isn't always the solution and what is. People in this pattern often reach for accountability as the answer. Find someone to check in with, an accountability partner, someone to report to you, right? Which makes sense. And accountability can definitely help in the short term. But here's why it rarely fixes the underlying issue. The mechanism driving the pattern is internal. It's the discomfort avoidance, the shiny object response. It's that reliance on motivation as fuel. The accountability partner doesn't change any of those things. What they do is add external pressure, which works when the external pressure is present, stops the moment it isn't. Which is why most accountability arrangements eventually fade out, because the person hasn't built that internal system. They're borrowing someone else's. And if both people are relying on each other, twice the opportunity for the system to fail. The internal system has 3 components. First is a specific target with a defined timeline. Not get fit, but add 10 pounds to XYZ movement in 12 weeks. Specific, right? Not build a business. Sign 1 client in the next 60 days. Specific enough that you know when you've won the day. Now you can go even a step deeper into this. Don't even make an outcome that's out of your control the goal. Make it the inputs that would lead to this outcome. So if my goal was to lift an extra 20 pounds for the bench press or whatever movement in the next 12 weeks, don't make that the goal. Make the goal hitting bench press 3 times a week for the next 12 weeks with maybe a heavy day, a higher volume day, and a weak point day, let's say. 3 times a week. For signing a client, make it do 100 outreaches to different businesses every single day for 60 days. This way you're physically in control of if you win the day or not. Second is a schedule block that happens regardless of how you feel. Not when you're inspired, but scheduled. Same time, same format, non-negotiable. You don't decide whether to show up, you decide what you're going to do when you get there. And third, a tracking system that makes your output visible. Google Sheets, a notebook, anything, because you can't argue with a number. Visible progress, even slow progress, produces more motivation than motivation ever could. I personally like percentile systems. This really motivates me to keep going because even when the progress feels small, you're able to compare yourself to how far you've started from someone who hasn't started yet and see the progress you've made. The social media will really mess with our heads and our expectations of where we should be for whatever the thing is. We want to start social media and expect to be at 100,000 subscribers. We want to work out for a month and expect to have the results of someone who's worked out for 10 years. That's just not how it goes. But you can hit very good goals and you can get 80% of the way there, 60% of the way there in like 30 to in a couple of months of really working hard. For example, if you have over 100 subscribers on YouTube, you're in the top 33% of all YouTube channels in the world, which is crazy, right? Because 100 subscribers doesn't feel like a lot at all. But if you compare it to all the channels out there, it's top 33%. Or if you have a 225-pound bench press, this may not feel like a lot if you're watching a lot of gym content, but that's a top 1% lift of all of North American men, which is very impressive, right? But social media will mess with your expectations. 315 is the new 225, which may be the case, but you're still top 1% for this specific lift, right? And that should be motivating to you. Don't let it discredit you because you're comparing yourself against the top 0.01% on social media. That's the whole system. Not complex, just built from the inside out instead of borrowed from the outside in. So the identity underneath this pattern is important. Here's the deepest part of this. The shiny object pattern isn't just a habit, it's an identity. Every time you have an exit, instead of doing the planned thing, you cast a vote for the story that you're the type of person who takes the exit. And that story compounds until the exit is just what you do. Until your identity is, I'm just the person who starts something but doesn't finish them. I'm someone who needs to be inspired to finish the work. I'm someone who can't stick to things. Once those statements are running, they become self-fulfilling. But it's important to never say these things to yourself. Don't have negative self-talk because you act in alignment with who you believe you are. But the identity shift is the same way. Every time you do the scheduled thing you didn't feel like, you're casting a vote for a different story. You may feel imposter syndrome at the start because you're not actually, that type of person yet, you'll tell yourself. You're not actually there yet. But let me ask you, if you do the thing that type of person does consistently over a longer time horizon, are you not just becoming that person by doing the thing? You are. That's literally how it works. I'm the type of person who shows up regardless, and then you show up. I'm the type of person who finishes what they start. I'm the type of person who does the boring work. You can decide who you are. You can demonstrate it one action at a time. And the story updates based on the evidence you give it, not based on what you say you'll do, based on what you actually do, especially when you didn't want to. Every time you do the thing you planned when you didn't feel like it, you become slightly more of that type of person who does that. So here's what I want you to take from this. Life with meaning is not built from grand, exciting moments. It's built from the same boring, repetitive, slightly uncomfortable things done consistently over a long enough time period that they compound into something real. That's it. That's the whole formula. Those exciting days are the exception. The boring days are the rule. And people who understand that, who genuinely accept that most of the work is going to feel mundane and show up for it anyways. Those are the people who have something to show for after 5 years, 10 years. Not the people who were most inspired, or the people who found the best accountability partner. The people who got comfortable with doing the unsexy work on the days they didn't feel like it. Because those were the days that actually built something. I still feel that pull for new things, different content formats, different series, different direction. Comes up regardless, and the question I've started to ask myself when it does is this a genuinely better direction? Or is this just the discomfort of the current thing making the new thing feel more appealing? The two things feel identical in the moment, but they're not. And slowing down long enough to ask the question is usually enough time to tell the difference. Most of the time, it's the second. And the answer is to go back to the scheduled thing. Take consistent action on your main thing, and don't stop. Peace.